kind of share with you some thoughts from our own journey that we've made through pre-service and as pre-service trainers. So here's the voice of experience. If you will unite, if you'll come together, if you'll be colleagues and compatriots and help each other out, you will love this experience and you'll do better. And so names is only the beginning. You've got to get to know each other. And so spend some time this week. Don't sit in the same seat every day. When you come in, move around, get to know people, talk to them, find out things about them, and start to form some what's the word I'm looking for? Some teams to help each other out as you go throughout this. One of my favorite things to see is when we get together for in-service and when you see student teachers comparing notes on what they did in class and how it worked for them. And it's good to see, so I would encourage you. Along those lines, and we're going to take a little field trip. Now, Brother Robbins and I have both been directors of church history workshops, so we've learned a little bit about moving people, and that there is a human tendency to meander instead of move. We're not going to meander. So when I said that about getting to know each other, not right now. Okay? We're going to stand up and we're going to walk at a brisk pace over to the gym. Ready? Okay, you can leave all your stuff. Just follow me. I gotta get this. Good.
Yeah, we're missing many here, aren't we?
How's he doing? I'm just sitting in the can for the
About right here in the calendar. Not that much. Right there. Matthew, when's your birthday?
May 30th.
Today?
Oh my God! Happy birthday!
Happy birthday
to you! Happy birthday
to you!
Happy birthday, dear Matthew! Happy birthday to you!
When we have lunch today, after the sisters, you go first. Okay, so we have you lined up pretty much according to the calendar. I should have seen one. You are more than a number to us, I want you to know that. In a sense a little bit, you four are a group. 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 You three are a group. You three are a group. Okay, take just a minute to get to know your group. You know their names, but just remind everybody in your group your name and your assignment and your favorite food.
Take the run off the cross.
Push two.
Long step.
Oh, very many.
Oh, we didn't ever come apart, did we? Did you see something?
I think we did pretty good.
Only what the video can tell.
I'm gonna say go, and you're gonna do it again. You have 60 seconds to strategize. Go for it.
I didn't have to do it because they didn't have time.
There's the take one for the team strategy right there.
Here, let's do a little. Take one for the team. Tie one on. After video. Oh! Now that's on video. You can choose whether you go back or not.
Do we have contact?
Your feet.
When you're not strong.
Oh!
No. Hey.
Do you want me to rewind?
He scared me.
It's like one, and then yours would be on top of
This time I just tied it not too short.
I like that.
Last time I tied it too short.
It's just an excuse to redo it.
The blessings.
The blessings of cheating.
The blessings of cheating.
Oh, halfway? Oh, we got this. Makes sense, makes sense.
On your mark. Get set. Go.
Stellar job, gentlemen.
It looked terribly awkward, but it worked.
A little more difficult in high heels and
High
dresses.
heel activities.
You made it. Okay, let's gather in for just a minute. So just for a minute before we head back in there, just share with me a little bit what strategies tended to work and what didn't, what you tried and what didn't work. So I don't care if you know about what didn't and what did. Just talk a little bit about your strategies.
I think personally we did best our first time, ironically, and we didn't like really strategize at all. We did, but I think the biggest part was we talked together, we tried to move together.
While you were doing it.
While we were doing it, yes. And then after that we tried to think, okay, maybe we should just have one person talking, like we kind of focused too much. But the first time it was just way more in sync and way more unified, I felt.
So by the way, I'm sure you're all perceptive enough to catch on that there's a purpose to our doing this. So let's be thinking about symbolically what that might mean for a school year. Okay? So think about, now the absence of a strategy seems like that would be counterintuitive to what we're talking about. But what about talking as they went?
I was going to say, talking is when we had to focus on our own steps. If we looked at where the other groups were in comparison to our own, we lost concentration with our own feet, and so we had to really focus on our what's that U word? Union.
Okay, there you go.
Our union.
So take these two so far. We needed to talk to each other as we went. We needed to focus on our own steps, right? What's the end thus we see so far? And then we'll get some other thoughts.
It's all unity, and thus we see when we are united, we will succeed. I don't know.
So what will that look like during the school year, this thing about talking to each other as you went?
It's not a competition, and as we work together, we get ideas from each other, and it's all about like the overall goal of the students and not us.
Good, yeah. When I taught at Bonneville up in Ogden, at the end of every school day, that's a precious time to be prepping, right? But we would inevitably end up, like I would go walk into the back of someone's classroom while they were cleaning up, and I'd sit in the desk and just ask them, what did you do? Or what are you doing tomorrow? And one of the other teachers walking by would come in and sit at another desk, and it happened almost every day, where we would have this impromptu faculty meeting, really, where we'd just kind of congregate. It would be sitting out in the hallway, it would be in the foyer, it would be in a classroom, it would be huddled around someone's desk in their office, talking as we went throughout the year and gleaning from each other. What about the focusing on your own feet and not the other's feet? Because that could sound like you could misinterpret that as closing your office door and not interacting. Is there something to be learned?
I think an important part is just going along with the not comparing and focusing on yourself. Maybe someone else or a student teacher, another teacher, full-time teacher has a strength, and maybe you'll compare, I don't do that as well. So maybe just focusing on your strengths, because everyone has different strengths. We're not all going to teach exactly the same. So don't compare yourself or point out, maybe constantly think about a strength that someone else has that you don't. Focus on your group or yourself in the student teaching process and just improve and learn all you can. Because when that group's ahead of you, you just maybe try to catch up to them, you'll actually do worse than if you just have kept at your constant pace.
That's a great thought. Thank you, John. Mrs. Tracy.
Comparing to the classroom, when we were on the line, looked at how other people had done it or how they were setting up, and used that, which I kind of feel like is like your staff impromptu meetings where you're talking about, oh, how are you going to teach this? But when you're actually going like in the classroom, I think it wouldn't be helpful to be like, man, kind of like you were saying, I like wish I had the strength that so and so had. That's where you need to like focus on like, okay, I've got my plan, I'm going. But talking about your plan with other people, looking at how they're doing it, and then making your own, that can be super helpful. So it's like when you collaborate, when you're like, okay, this is how I'm going to do it, and like not being distracted by comparisons.
I love it. Thank you. What else? What worked and what didn't, and how might we compare it?
Well, I really liked her comment because it made me think about there are things that can cause us to get distracted. She was talking about other groups and looking where they're at, and that can actually take you off course. And I think that there's some things, it's real, I think, for most of us, that when you're getting observed, there's a level of anxiety that can cause you to lose focus on what you're doing. And I think making sure that we plan and we prepare, and not allowing outside distractions or other things to cause us to lose our focus.
That's good. Sister Stassany, when the other group came to give you some counsel on how they did it help?
No, can I tell why? So there were 3 of them, and they had this really cool process of standing on each other's feet, and they just like flew. They were at the end of the time, they were like here. But when we tried that, we realized that we had a different set of tools, and we had 4 of us, and it was just different. So it was interesting to get their insight. It was interesting to try it. We definitely got farther than we thought we would, but it just was different situation, different tools, different.
So it is true that all analogies break down, but I don't know that this is a time where the analogy did break down. Think about times during the year. Now, you could misinterpret this and with catastrophic results. But there might be times where you receive feedback or where you receive suggestions or teaching ideas that are not going to work for you. They just won't work for you. And sometimes you might see what somebody else did in their lesson, and you might try to pick the exact same thing up, PowerPoint and all, and drop it into yours, and you are David in Saul's armor. It doesn't fit. It doesn't work. So now misinterpret that though. What might the misinterpretation of that be?
Oh, the misinterpretation would be, our way was totally better, and we could just figure this out better than
You know what, I've not had real great success with people giving me ideas, so I'm not gonna listen to what anybody has to say anymore. That'd be catastrophic. I don't want to beat it to death, but if you have more ideas, I would love to hear them.
I had one, just thinking in terms of like personal accountability, because I realized that at some points I was like, man, who's the problem here? Like, where's the problem in our group? Like, who's the weak link? And then I realized kind of at the end, maybe I should have been focusing more on like what I was doing wrong or what I could have done better. And I think that's true in life and everything, in teaching as well. That sometimes we kind of look for the problem with the student. Well, who's the problem student, or who's the trainer that's not helping me, not doing their part? Instead, we can look internally to make changes in ourselves.
That's wise. Any others? Yes.
So we used our ties to make it work. That was the only time we were successful. And apparently that's cheating, but I thought it was like there's lots of other tools and resources like we have, like a book that gives us lots of good ideas for lesson plans. We have like scriptures for other teachers and like all these different things that we can use to be successful. We don't have to do it on our own.
Perfect. Use your resources, right? Smart.
The thing I was thinking of as we were going, we changed our strategy every single time because it wasn't working very well. And I think that if you've been trying something over and over again, sometimes we get stubborn, at least I know I do, and I want to make the thing I'm trying to do work, no matter how long it takes me to make it work. And I think it's important to remember, if something's not working, don't worry about changing it into a different strategy or a different method or something like that.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it. You do want to continue to improve, and there will always be things that can be tweaked that way. But doing the exact same thing and expecting different results.
Yeah.
Andrea?
We just noticed that we were really bad, like the last team at the beginning, and then the second time also. But by the third time, we were one of the first, and we just said kind of like, sometimes it takes a little bit longer. You have to be patient with your weaknesses at first, and take the time to be able to settle into where you are, be it like a new classroom or new students that you don't know, or getting into student teaching or teaching more than you're used to. And then if you're patient in that process, at the end the success comes. You have to be patient.
Sorry, I noticed too, like with our group, like there was multiple times that we had to start over because our contact broke or whatnot. And instead of, I don't know, I feel like as far as working together, choosing to be humble and having to go back and not cut corners and cheat to get ahead. And also like being joyful in the opportunity to go back and learn. And that's not always easy to be joyful and be like, oh, I ruined that lesson, or I got this critique and I have to be better. So just attitude and being excited to go back and start over and not cut corners and use each other and have that humility, I thought was really important.
That makes me think of when I've seen teachers who they'll call or they'll email or something and they'll say, hey, I did this in class today. I felt a little unsettled with it, either something I taught or the way I taught it. What should I do? And in some cases, it's best to just move on. But in some cases, it's probably worth going back to address again with the class. And so the next time they met, coming in and humbly saying, hey, you know what, I said this. Since then, I found this other resource. I want to share this with you. Can you see where what I said, this is really much more clear and much more accurate? It takes humility. Yeah. Did I hear over here in the middle? Okay.
I was going to say, by small and simple things, our mountains move.
Yeah.
So we had, it was small techniques that all of us moved together as one. So it was just those small little things.
Keep thinking about this. Oh, yes.
The bare minimum was that our feet had to touch, right? Like that was the bare minimum, but we decided that linking arms, so it's not just doing the minimum thing that you can do. Like get closer, take advice whenever someone gives it, embrace that somebody's going to be in there critiquing you. Don't be like, hey, well, I have to do this, but I'm really just going to do it my own. But you have to embrace it.
I'm glad that you added that. That's a great one. I was a little nervous about some with, it's like you guys are doing the take one for the team approach where, who was the bottom foot in your group?
Depends. He swaps a little bit.
To even out the bruising. And feet on feet, just walk towards your heels. Will you continue to think about this kind of as a metaphor throughout the week, throughout the year, about ways that you can reach your goal together, about ways that you can strategize together, ways that you can improve together? Keep mulling through that a little bit. Some additional ideas, but we can move back into the classroom.
Their goals as incompatible with each other. and that's the source of conflict. And so if you have a husband and a wife who are in conflict, it's usually because they are perceiving their goals as incompatible. And so whenever one of the ways to resolve conflict is to stop and realize and identify, the goals that each other has, and you often find that the goals are the same, just the approaches or maybe the angle that you're looking at it is a little bit different. So yeah, goals, common goals unite, and then whenever there's two different goals, that's usually the source of conflict.
We won't beat this to death, but have you ever heard of the stages of team development? A couple of heads nodding. Anybody know what they are? Storming. The first stage is storming. The next stage is. Yeah, did we get that? Yep. Then.
Performing?
Form.
And then, form.
Can someone who knows them describe them real quickly? What they look like?
So storming would be like coming up with ideas and kind of, just brainstorming.
Yeah, but if we're talking about goals and conflict, the storming one is we're at odds. We see it differently. Right? Maybe with, I don't know, I don't want to beat this to death. When we start to see similar goals, I think we got this backwards, didn't we? Matthew?
I don't think so.
So how does it go?
No, I think it's right. But Anthony's gonna Google this.
We start to see some similar goals working towards until eventually we're united in the same goal, right? When we're performing. Is this when we're starting to see it more like this?
Yeah, forming. And then the implementation.
This is when you start to see a strong central leader that starts to at least give them, it's not necessarily because they're united, but they at least have a leader that they can kind of come behind. Yeah.
It's forming first. Forming and then swarming.
You're right.
So forming is simply what happened this morning when you walked into the room. We came here, we're together in a group. But then you start to have to work together on the project. And you have to try to, maybe you have one really strong personality that says this is the way it's going to be in another house. So I'll give you a mission example. I had wonderful companions on my mission. I mean, really wonderful companions. The companion, however, that I had the hardest time getting along with was my last companion. And I think it's ironic. The ironic thing about it was he was the assistant to the president and I was the other assistant to the president. You would think that if we were talking about a united view, right, you would think that those two missionaries could come together and have a wonderful companionship. But I didn't particularly want to go to that assignment. I wanted to finish out my mission where I was. I went in a little bit disappointed. I mean, not, mom's real glad and excited and happy that her son's an assistant to the president, but it's not how you want to finish your mission. And so that, I was probably carrying that a little bit in with me. He had a very strong personality, and I think I did too. And so as we came in and we started to talk and started to kind of try to work together, it was two egos. I was a little bit humiliated by the fact that his Japanese was better than mine and he was younger than me in the mission. That bothered me more than it should have. It shouldn't have bothered me at all, but it did bother me. He did have a strong personality and not particularly adept at tact. And there was a day we were at church. Church had just finished, and I was talking to the ward mission leader. He was standing at the door and wanted to go talk to someone else or see someone else. And he's standing at the door and he sees me and he goes and whistles for me to come. And I finished my conversation with the ward mission leader, and I walked over and I put my finger in his face, and I just said, I'm not going to do it to you, Sergio, because I put my finger in his face and I just said, that's how you call a dog. And I will never see you talk to another human being in that kind of way again. And I had never had an interaction like that with a missionary before. Just getting into each other's space like that. We were approaching the Christmas. We were approaching Christmas and New Year's, and I served in Japan, and it was a pretty difficult time to do much work, especially New Year's. Christmas was kind of not really that different for them, but New Year's was kind of a big deal. And our mission president had asked us to kind of consider what we could do about it. He and I were walking to take some pictures to get them developed for the new missionaries that had just come in. And as we were walking together, we were talking and we were brainstorming about things and what could we do. And they were both about this immediate need, but also about the larger need in the mission. As we talked, I recognized pure revelation. As we talked about what was needed, and we shared ideas, and those ideas sparked new ideas, until, long story short, we were literally in a dead sprint on the way back to the mission office to get back to tell the mission president our proposal. It was pure revelation. What happened over the course of the next week or two, as we worked to prepare this, because we had little to no time, was that we were completely united by a vision that we shared. And I realized something. The things that I had resented in him, and there were things he resented in me, the things that we didn't like about the other were our weaknesses. And in this companionship, we were perfectly matched to do what we had to do. I could write a book about it. And I won't take your time any further, but suffice it to say, seriously, throughout those couple of weeks together as we were prepared for that especially, there were times where I would think, oh, I don't know how to, he will. And he did. And vice versa, where we could help each other because our strengths complemented the other one's weaknesses, if that makes sense. As you go throughout this year, you are all going to be coming from different places. And that's a really, really great thing. You're going to be able to help and contribute and assist. As you think about how shared goals can unite, I want you to think about some of those goals. Later on in the year, when we have one of our ongoing, the in-services that we have throughout the year, we're going to have one where we're going to talk about the possible differences of objective that you might have. And so it'd be good to remember this for when we come back to that later. But I want you to think about a couple of possibilities about how you might approach this whole process of student teaching. There is a possibility that you're going to look at the objective for the next year to get hired. And that's understandable. You've got to provide for families, you've got to think about your future. It's understandable if that becomes a focus. It would be our hope that your purpose will be to help youth. Do you know it well enough that you could recite it? You probably ought to memorize it if you don't. So let's try and just do your best. You ready? Our purpose is to help youth and young adults understand and rely on the teachings and atonement of Jesus Christ, qualify for the blessings of the temple, and prepare themselves, their families, and others for eternal life with their Father in heaven. If that's your objective for the coming year, as opposed to getting hired, I'd like you to think for a minute, and let's talk through how will that impact your relationship with students? Well, let's see, weird, without an eraser. If there's just a napkin or something back there, that'll work.
Ladine had one. And I thought
I want you to think about how that will impact these different things. Your relationship with your students, your relationship with other teachers, including those others that are sitting next to you right now, and your relationship with trainers. So I need 2 scribes. Thank you. Thank you. And the reason I need 2 of you is because we're just gonna go really fast. So you guys just take turns when you'll be hopping all over from place to place. Because I don't care which of the 6, you see the 6? I don't care which of these we talk about in order. You just jump all over the board. So how will those different objectives impact those different relationships?
So I was thinking about this as we were talking about it and comparing what we did out there and your experience on your mission, and it reminded me of El Tom Perry when he went to that farm or that show and he saw the oxen in the race, and you know the strong oxen that tried to race against each other, and they're the teams that lost. And
does everybody know the talk he's talking about? It's Elder Packer.
Sorry. Oh, Elder Packer, sorry.
Equally yoked.
Sorry.
And he's at a New England fair, right?
Yeah,
There's these oxen, they've got the heavy loads. Some would go fast and it would cause a glancing blow. And, okay, go ahead.
So, and I compared that with, and when I was thinking about your experience on your mission, that when teaching the gospel of Jesus Christ, there is no competition. But if we have the mindset that we're here to get hired, we're not going to want to help each other or anyone else, because that giving our ideas to someone else could upset that.
They're your competition.
That experience. Yes, that's right. So then it becomes competitive. Whereas if we're there to help youth and young adults come unto Christ, then we're going to want to do everything in our power to help.
What you're describing seems like it's going to fit a little bit more in here, at least for right now.
Yeah.
So how would we sum that up in a way that we could get it as a bullet item on a list? How is that going to impact your relationship with students, or with your fellow teachers? Negatively, right? So, it's going, how should we word that?
Competition. I think competition.
Competition. Whereas down here, it's more consecration.
I was thinking with that same truth there, that with the goal of helping the youth, our relationship with the students becomes our focus. And our relationship with other teachers become a resource rather than a competition.
Good, good.
So right here.
So we're focused on their needs, and they become a resource. Good, thank you.
I think with our relationship with our students, if we're focused on getting hired, we will be more frustrated with them when they don't give like perfect answers. We're being observed. It's like, gosh, like I know you know the answer. Why didn't you say it? And it's a less loving relationship because you want something specific from them. I want you to make me look like an awesome teacher, and that's not at all the purpose.
Please learn from the mistakes of one who has gone before you. The first month and a half of my student teaching, I saw my students as the potential obstacle to my being hired. They were a little rowdy. They weren't doing everything I wanted them to. They weren't responding in all the ways that I wanted them to. And I remember coming home one day and telling my wife, my class is broken, and I'm not going to get hired because of these knotheads. And she called me on it. And she called me on it and said, you know, you're talking about them like they're your obstacle instead of the reason for your existence. And I was rebuked. In part by her, but mostly by the Spirit to follow the truth that she taught me. So that's absolutely true. If our focus is on getting hired, then we might be frustrated with them and see them as an obstacle. John?
I think with trainers, if we're just focused on getting hired, we won't be genuine, we won't be ourselves. We'll try and be the seminary teacher, be the act.
Along those lines, we go through a little bit of a dilemma. Do we tell you when we're coming or not? Do you understand why we go through the dilemma, though? Yeah. Because if we tell you the night before, what's the possibility of happening?
I'm going to sit down and change my lesson so you'll like it a lot.
For me. Where your focus should have been on the students. If your focus is on us, then the lesson will be focused on what you think we want to see, which ironically you feel is different than what you had prepared for the students. It doesn't make sense, but it happens. If we don't tell you and we just walk in, what's the possibility of happening? You freak out, right? You panic. And so we go through this dilemma. And it's all based on the assumption that whether we tell you before or we don't tell you, it's going to negatively impact you because your focus is on us. Where if it wasn't on us, we wouldn't have to worry about that. We'd either just come when we come, or we'd call when we know we're coming, or because your focus wouldn't be on us. Sometimes we'll sit in the back of the classroom and we'll watch your eyes look at us. And if we're noticing that your eyes are looking at us, so are your students. What do you think if you're a student in your class and you see the teacher watching the pre-service trainer, not you, how does that impact your relationship with the students?
I think being a student in that class makes you think that they're not teaching for you, so you don't have to listen because it's not for you today.
Yeah.
I actually have a personal experience from this from my own practicum. And so my first 2 teaching experiences, I didn't think I was going to be able to even do a student teaching, and that seminary teaching was a possibility for me. And so to be totally honest, now Brother Hunt was the one who came and watched me, but I didn't teach at all to try to impress him those first 2 days, because I was like, I'm teaching these students because I have a family, I have 6 children. I did not think I was going to be able to quit my job to be able to student teach in the fall, because that was the only option, but I am doing that. And so the first 2 times I taught, I was like, Brother Hunt is here, great. I was like, I'm not going to be able to teach seminary anyway, and so, I'm just going to teach these students. And then I can remember actually psychologically thinking consciously, now it's a possibility. And so I tried, I don't know, I changed things up, and I wanted to almost impress, I know Brother Hunt's going to be here again watching me. And then my last time teaching, and I thought about that, and the difference that it made in teaching. And in my last teaching experience, I tried to make a conscious decision not to do that. And it was amazing the difference, again, that last time teaching.
That's great. I love that. Thank you.
Also, I was thinking about this unity and with shared goals thing, and I think that one thing with our relationships with students is to actually share our goals with the students so they know what we're trying to do so that they can be on the same page with us. Because I think along with the pulling oxen thing, when I was a student in seminary, that I had my own ideas about what I was getting out of seminary. In my opinion, this is what was going to happen. If the teacher wasn't doing that, then I wasn't listening to the teacher because I wanted to do this. And so I think just really helping them to understand, this is why I'm here. Because, as missionaries, that's something that we do a lot of, setting expectations and just showing with our investigators so they know this is why we're here and this is what we expect of you. And so then everybody's on the same page and there's a lot less conflict. And so I think we have better relationships with our students when they get what we're all about. This is what I'm here to do. This is how I want to help you.
Think about the impact on classroom management and grading and tardiness and attendance issues, and when you have a shared purpose. Great statement. Because we don't have anything here. Oh yeah, go ahead. Perfect.
I think when we're aligned with our purpose, I think that our trainers become kind of over here a resource and not an intimidation. It's not scary when they're in the back of the classroom. That's an opportunity for them to help us improve and help us see what aspects of our teaching methods need to be kind of tweaked to be better for our purpose and better achieve that.
So, perfect, yeah. Along those lines, shameless self-plug here, but every year we see this, where someone will sit in the back of someone's classroom, we'll come up afterwards and we'll say, hey, are you teaching the same lesson again tomorrow, or was this the second time you taught it? No, I'm teaching again tomorrow. Tomorrow, why don't you try, and we'll give a little suggestion, and we'll get contact back saying, boy, that went better. Thank you so much, that was really helpful. And then we'll see a little bit of a switch go off in a person where they'll realize that. And they'll say, I have a class that's not doing so well. You've seen my A class. You need to come see my B class. They're tough. Can you come and give me some suggestions? And now you're asking to be observed when you're teaching the tougher class because you want to help them. And you don't feel like you're getting through. Something changes there. I don't know if that makes sense, but
another big thing there, I think, is that we're doing it strictly to help the students draw near to God. When our trainers give us advice and even critique maybe our personality or something we're doing, I think that we won't get frustrated. We won't take it personal because we'll just realize, hey, this is only to help the students. We won't take it offensively.
Yeah. Instead, you'll respond to it. Good, Brother Martin.
We did this a lot with those who were in our hiring interviews at BYU, but it's almost like the parable of the 2 classes and the pre-service trainer. And a way to know whether you're looking at us correctly is if you have class A, which is like the City of Enoch class, and then Class B, which is another city. Which class would you want your trainer to go to? The one that's going to go well, go smooth, or the one that you're having a hard time reaching? If your answer is, I want them to come to the one that's going to go really smooth, which is the natural answer, and it's the one that you'll tend to give, you're kind of looking at us trainers the wrong way. If you're saying, I really want them to come to this class because I'm struggling and maybe they can help me reach the kids, like that's a good barometer in your mind to whether you're looking at us the right way. And it's probably a battle that you'll have to fight continually throughout the year. So don't think you're abnormal, like, I'm one of the unrighteous ones who wants to look good when I teach. But if you're trying to hide an issue from us instead of letting us help with an issue, you're looking at us the wrong way. So
You can sit down, Matthew, let's get your thought, and I'll be distracted.
Okay. I was going to say that Thomas S. Monson has a quote that says, when performance is measured, performance increases. When performance is measured and accounted for, the rate of performance accelerates.
Yeah.
So accountability, yeah, we're going to be kind of held, there's going to be an accountability factor that's not going to disappear with the dynamic of trainers being there. But I think accountability is such a huge tool to allow that performance to accelerate. Even in the business world, you see all these people that are taking a mentoring approach and talking about how the best way to get better is to have a mentor, to have somebody who can personally coach you along, and that accountability is a huge tool for not only personal improvement, but if you think about it, that's such a tool for preparing our own selves for the second coming. That's going to be, I know exactly how I would react on the day of the second coming by how I use the accountability factor now in my own life. And so rather than use it as, like we said, we kind of view that as a barrier sometimes to or a halt in our progression, but accountability accelerates that. And so we need to be using accountability as a tool, not something to invoke fear.
It moves us forward, it's a lever.
Well, it accelerates it, yeah, even quicker than if it was just measured performance. That accountability factor accelerates the performance by even more.
I love that, thank you, Matthew. There's more here, right? There's more here, in fact, yes, one more.
I think the biggest thing, just going off of what Martin said too, like when we're focused on getting higher, I really like how that says getting higher and helping the youth, because that's exactly what we think about. We're human. I think that it comes down to a higher law. There's a higher law and there's a lower law. And quite frankly, if we don't get the job at the end of the year because someone else got it, I think that we should just be happy for whoever is teaching in the aspect of, well, they are best for the students, right? It's the best thing for the students, and for whatever reason why this happened, we should care about what's best for them. And I think, so when we do get relations with the students, I think of getting higher, we're thinking completely about ourselves. And with the other, we're thinking 100% about the students. And we don't care, and it's hard to say that we don't care. We do care. But in the aspect of, as long as the students are being taken care of, we can be happy. We can be grateful, and we can have our hearts are in the right place. It's like, well, the kids are being taken care of. That's all I wanted. If it's not me, great. Then it's Cindy or whoever it may be, and you're genuinely happy, and that's only going to come with a pure heart.
I haven't had the blessing of teaching my own children yet. Just assignments haven't lined up with that. But if I was on a faculty, and if my children were coming into that building, I would want to look at my children's personalities and want to say, well, it would be nice to teach my own children if I know that Sister Pace has what my daughter needs and has the voice that will resonate, and that happens, right? Then I would not want to teach my daughter. I would want my daughter to be in that class. And I think that's along the lines of what you're talking about what's best for them. Now there's so much more here. I think there's more that we could have tapped into Jim as well. I hope that we're just getting a seed planted in your mind a little bit about how you might approach this year. Our hope is that you will unite as a group, that you'll see each other as a resource to bless each other. You'll see us as a resource. That your focus, if it's here, it's like what the Savior taught, that if you seek your life, you lose it. But if you lose your life, you find it. That if your focus is here, well, interestingly, you just dramatically increase the likelihood of that. That makes sense, doesn't it? When we come in and we sit in your classroom, we're going to be watching what's happening to them, not what you're doing. Think about that difference. We had someone who was seeking to return to employment with us, and had been a teacher for us for many, many years, left to do some other employment, now wanted to come back. And I went and watched that teacher teach, and the pre-service director went and watched that teacher teach. And there were a lot of really impressive things and very polished in many, many regards. But I left that, and I went over and I watched Cassidy Oldham teach at Tempe. Same day. Went over and watched Cassidy Oldham, one of our student teachers, teach. And I was watching what the students were doing and what they were feeling and what they were sharing and how they were testifying. It was a marked difference. She herself was not nearly as polished, but the student experience was off the charts. And we hired her. And we didn't hire him back. If you can let this be your focus, you will dramatically increase the likelihood. I want us to take just about 5 minutes. And in those 5 minutes, I'd like you to look at one thing in the Gospel Teaching Learning Handbook. One more seed to plant. Gospel Teaching Learning Handbook, page 1, or let's go, it's page 3. It's 1.2.3. Part of our objective statement, when you get down into the paragraphs that are under that, the live paragraph that's under that, 1.2.3, Sergio, you have that?
Yes.
Just that bold heading, we
continually seek to improve our performance, knowledge, attitude, and character.
You think of those 4 categories: performance, knowledge, attitude, and character. Performance, knowledge, attitude, and character. Consider, as you're approaching this school year, the most helpful things that you can do to increase and improve in performance, knowledge, attitude, and character. And will you just take a moment and consider both your relationship with each other, with us, the focus that you have. What can you do this year and beginning this summer to improve in performance, knowledge, attitude, and character? I'm just going to give you a few minutes for that. Start setting some goals. Give you another couple of minutes. I'd like to point one more thing out to you as you consider this. It's a statement by President Eyring that's in that same section where it talks about continually seeking to improve performance, knowledge, attitude, and character. Bottom of page 3, Elder Henry B. Eyring taught an important principle about self-improvement. See where I am? Who has that? Hold you have it.
Most of us have had some experience with self-improvement efforts. My experience has taught me this about how people and organizations improve. The best place to look is for small changes we can make in things we do often. There is power in steadiness and repetition, and if we can be led by inspiration to choose the right small things to change, consistent obedience will bring great improvement.
For what that's worth, add that to your thoughts as you finish this up. Just give me another minute. You don't need to turn there, but do you remember your New Testament well enough to remember about what's going on in John 17? Where does that fall? What's happening in John 17? Say it again.
Intercessory prayer.
What do we call the intercessory prayer?
Interceding.
This is before Gethsemane, right? And yet, even here, he's interceding. He's going before the Father and saying, before I'm done, this is my prayer for them. You know, we are touched, and rightfully so, when we're in a meeting and there's an apostolic blessing, and you think, wow, an apostle praying in my behalf. It's very touching, always touches me. Now here's the Messiah praying on our behalf. We don't have a transcript of what he prayed in Gethsemane, but we do have this one in John 17. And again, we don't take time to talk about it, except just from your remembrance of it. What's he praying for in that prayer?
That they'll be unified, just like he and God are.
It's interesting, isn't it? He prays that not one will be lost, and that I brought them here without losing any except for Judas. And he says that he prays that they'll not be lost, and that the means to accomplish that seems to be their unity, that they'll be united as he is. It's very telling that of all of the things he could have prayed for in that prayer, their unity is repeated over and over and over again throughout the prayer. There are things that you can do this year that will be very self-destructive and counterproductive. There are things that you can do this year that will accelerate that growth. As you consecrate your efforts and turn them over to the Lord, he'll make more of them than you could have. And so I just invite you to do a heart check and determine, what do you want to do? And what do you want to see as a result? He has a vested interest in your success. And I know that he'll help you as you seek that. And say that in the name of Jesus Christ, amen. Sister Vance is always very concerned that you not starve to death or anything. And so, she will feed you more than any human being should eat in the span of a 4-day period of time. So Sister Vance has prepared a snack for us that feels like a meal. But it's a snack back there. You want to partake, but don't fill yourself too much because lunch is coming. So, but I think we have a half an hour, right?
Yeah.
So you have a half an hour. During these breaks that we take, most of them will be about a half an hour, some a little bit shorter. We have right over here is the student lounge. There's ping pong, there's pool, there's foosball. And so we hope that you'll be able to, take advantage of that if you want to. Take a lap if you need to stretch your legs a little bit and get to know each other. So, any other instructions?
Just one other thing. We have a couple of BYU people here who need to be hired. And can you give me a name?
Mark Bergen and Daniel Dorius.
Mark Anthony Bergen. That's right.
Sorry.
That's right. I was thinking, we have a new one. Yeah. And so would you mind during this half an hour break, grab food and then go with Sister Card? And can you do 2 at a time or just 1?
2 at a time with Daniel.
Okay. So if you two, Mark and Daniel, could go with her and, okay, awesome.
Okay, ready break.
Thanks, Mark.
You guys know what time lunch is going to be?
Oh, restrooms are on the other side of this wall.